tell us your story about how you fell in love with it.
I obviously started playing at a young age. Back then it was just Little League Baseball. So I played Little League Baseball, travel all-star baseball, played high school baseball, played 1 year at University of Indianapolis. But my passion for the game was probably more than my talent of the game. So I just always loved the game of baseball. It was a connection between me and my grandfather growing up, and just, a way for me to enjoy teammates and just playing a sport and all the stuff that comes with that. So I really didn't finish my baseball career with a goal of coaching or running an organization for travel. None of that. I just kind of stumbled into that. But once I did, this is my 22nd or 23rd year doing it. So it hooked me, and I love it. So hopefully I'm doing it I got a 14-year-old son. So hopefully I'm doing it at least for another 5 or 6 more years.
Great. So you just blew my mind, right? I feel like I've been in this industry for a really long time. And, you said you've been coaching for 22, 23 years now, right? So
Yep.
what are some of the biggest changes or, things that you've seen in the industry over your time doing it? And then on top of that, if you could just kind of parlay that into, I know that the Canes, Indiana is a relatively new thing. What's the history and how did you come to the place you are today?
So when I first got into coaching, like I said, I kind of stumbled into it. My nephew, who was born back in '95, to give you an idea of when I started. So when he was 7 years old, he was on a team, and the coaches one day just didn't show up for practice. So I was a baseball guy sitting in the stands watching my nephew practice, and no one showed up. So I went out, ran the practice, and the rest is history. I took over that team, took that team all the way up through high school. That was my first group. Then I kind of started over again with the second group, and now my son is the third group that I've taken up through. So like I said, didn't really go to practice that day wanting to be the coach, but given my love for baseball, I did it. So that's kind of how it all started back in the early 2000s. And then one thing I noticed right away was that travel baseball was something I never had offered to me, just simply not because of my talent, just because it was too early. It just didn't exist. So when I got into it, I thought it was going to be this great, extravagant, amazing thing. And what I found was that it wasn't. I was extremely disappointed in it. I was underwhelmed, to be quite honest. And so my immediate thing was, how in the world do I fix this? How do I make this better for the kids and the families? And that kind of has been my mission since that day. And so we've gone out of our way to create a off-season player development program that we started back with the Indiana Irish in 2007, 2008 timeframe, where we had instructors leading hitting, pitching, performance training throughout the winter, all included in the fees. And that's one thing that I really wanted to make sure that we did was, I didn't want to nickel and dime parents where they had to pay every single time they came to the facility. I wanted to charge them a fee, and we were taking it on the chin a little bit on our hourly rate with our instructors and stuff, but it was the right thing to do. And so kids had a schedule, and they came and they went through hitting, they went through pitching, and then that was kind of the early days of it. And we've grown it now to where it's a system. It's a kind of a really nice process we have in place, and it's like a well-oiled machine at this point. So we've now been doing some form of a Twins camp or Canes camp now since 2010-11 timeframe. So we're now 13 years into running a camp in the off season, and that's really what sets us apart. And I just felt like with travel baseball, players and families should expect more from a player development standpoint. They should be putting money in to get their player better, not just to get a fancy uniform and go play in cool tournaments with expensive hotels, which I'm sure it's kind of where you guys got into all this at. But I just wanted to offer more. And my end goal was to change travel baseball in Indiana. I felt like if we could start to offer more, that it would put pressure on other programs to offer more. And it's not debatable that we were the first. No one can even come close to arguing that.
Yep.
So I feel like when we kind of created this new path, that we were going to make travel baseball better in Indiana, because we were going to force other programs to step up their game, and that's exactly what's happened.
I love it. I'd love to jump into that a little bit more, into the player development side of it with you. It's a passion of mine. When I used to run the Orlando Scorpions program before being with the Diamond Allegiance, and we made a change as well in my later tenure, which was train more and play less, right? And we talked about, obviously we were blessed enough to have a lot of high level players, but whether you're a Division One, SEC, Big Ten, whatever type of guy, or whether you're a junior college player, a Division III guy, right? You've got to continue to get better, right? There's no ceiling, right? You just got to continue to press and to develop. So if I guess what I'm getting at, Jason, if I'm a player or I'm a parent and I'm coming to you, right? What does it look like? What does my season look like when I play with you guys? That kind of might be different from the normal travel ball setup. What does it look like?
So our seasons are probably similar to what a family would anticipate or predict. We play a roughly 40 game season with 10 to 12 tournaments per team, and so that's probably pretty normal. Where we're different is our kids come to our facility 2, 3, 4 times a week starting in late October. We actually have a fall program that we run too, that just kind of goes over relays, cutoffs, bunts, like everything out on a field baseball strategy wise, even some technique stuff. So we start that in the fall, and then from late October through the middle of March, kids come 2, 3, 4 times a week. And look, 80% of our kids play multiple sports. So we welcome the multiple sport athlete, but what we do is provide many opportunities for them to come. None of them come all 4 times a week or 3 times a week, because they do play other sports. But what we've done is create opportunity for them to come in when they can and get hitting work, pitching work, defensive work, catching. We have a catching camp that we run every year. We have a mental training program. We have a professional sports psychologist on our staff that runs all of our athletes through a mental training program every year. We run sports performance because we feel like the conditioning element of it is extremely important and underdone, honestly. So we, from A to Z, we cover baseball, and that includes their mind, their body, and their baseball skills. And it is from October through March. And then in March, we start to look more like a normal program, where we go outside and we practice a few times a week. We do have our own fields, which is a benefit. So all of our teams have access to fields outside. So at that point, we look pretty much normal. But in the winter, we are anything but normal. I think the travel baseball world is catching up to us, which I'm super proud of. Like,
yep.
I'm extremely competitive, so I always want to do it better than everyone else. But I also am super proud that other organizations in this area are also running off-season programs, because I feel like we have a little bit to do with that.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think it's, on a national landscape, what the Diamond Allegiance would love to see more of as well, right? Is, if we can raise the floor, right? And it's only going to benefit every parent and every kid. And in the end of the day, I think the people that really care about this game, right? That's what we want, right? The best product that we can give to parents, to players, and that development side of it is so crucial and so important, right? So if there's a fun one for me. If you could take one word and describe your program, what would it be? And then how do you, as the leader of the program, try to bear that out on a daily basis?
So is all encompassing one word?
I think I'll go with
It's
hyphenated.
hyphenated, right?
Hyphenated accounts.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
hyphenated. So we're all encompassing. We cover every single possible thing that a player would need to become a better human being and baseball player. And we put human being in front of that because at the end of the day, most of them are not going to go play high level college baseball or professional baseball, but we're trying to make them better human beings so that they're better at life. And that was always important to me. So we're all encompassing. That's probably the best way to describe us. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's the best way for us to describe our programs, A to Z.
And so as the leader of the program, what would you say that you do to try to instill that in your staff and your players and make sure that your families understand that that's what you're here for?
So the first thing is we offer instructor training to all of our instructors. So when you come into our program, there is a set way that we do things, a certain way that we do things. That doesn't mean we're not flexible, and because we're extremely open to research. So that's the big thing, is that we try to stay cutting edge. We try to stay on top of it. So we're big on research and staying up with all of the latest information and establishing relationships with some of the brightest minds in the country and the world that we can then lean on to if we have questions or things that come up that we need answers to. So that's one way that we do it, is we try to have a very educated group of guys that have baseball backgrounds. We train all of our dad coaches that, because every program is going to have some dad coaches. We try to train those dad coaches so that no matter where they were at in their baseball career or what knowledge and playing background they have, that they get better while they're with us as a coach. So that's the best way to describe us is we develop coaches, we develop players, and that's probably that is the foundation of everything that we've been built on, is development. And a lot of people think that means that your player doesn't have to be good or elite to play in our program. And that's always been something we've battled, because like you just said, every player can get better. I don't care how good they are, they can get better. So we're just like every other program. We want the best players playing in our program, but we're still going to make those best players better. So that's the underlying thing for us. We've tried to build a culture on player development, getting people better at the game of baseball. So
I love it. And for me, in my experience in the game, the guys that want to put in that time and that effort are the ones that you see most successful at the next level, whatever that level is, right? I think nowadays, and I don't want to be like the preacher, but we do get caught up a lot with, the famous name or the famous person, right? And they're more famous and more famous, younger and younger nowadays.
right.
And I think having people that can instill, and even those top players, that they've got to continue to get better, that, if they commit as a 14-year-old, they couldn't step on the field play at LSU today, right? So you've got to continue to get better. You've got to continue to grind. And so what you guys are doing is exactly what's needed in this space. So you talked a little bit about your coaches. Obviously, running a program is a tough job. But yeah. Who are some of the guys or girls that are very instrumental in helping you on a day-to-day basis, and are people that really help make your program what it is?
Over 22 years, I'll have to go back to guys that aren't even with the Canes anymore. Guys that started this whole thing with me. John Reel would be the very first one that comes to mind. His son was on that first team that we coached. He kind of fell into coaching the same day that I did by being another dad there that was there when they didn't show up, and him and I kind of took that team, and then he helped me with the Irish. He helped me with the Twins. So he would be the first one I mentioned. Ken Schultz is another guy that was my first VP of the organization. Jeff Stout, former IU baseball player, great baseball mind, huge help to us. Scott Hassey, who is our lead pitching coordinator right now and vice president, has been with us for 8 or 9 years now. And then, we had the Earlham guys that came over that are key parts to our organization from an instruction standpoint, Brandon Smalling and Brennan Laird. So it takes, and now we have Aaron Kroll, former Roncalli coach, who is heading up our baseball operations now and helping me tremendously with getting some of that stuff off of my plate. So, and as you know, it takes an army of people to do this. No one can do it by themselves. And honestly, I could use more help, right? Like, you can never get enough help. But I think without those people that I mentioned, and hopefully I haven't forgotten anybody, but
And if we have, we apologize, because
yeah, I mean,
I didn't provide the questions ahead of time. So
yeah, so obviously without those guys, that we wouldn't be where we're at, and it's taken like a lot of open-mindedness and feedback from those people to make sure we stay on course and doing the right things. So I've never wanted to have just yes men around me that just kind of did what I wanted to do. I mean, I'm pretty, I've got a pretty strong personality, but I also really appreciate the feedback and the input, and like, hey, maybe there's a better way, or let's try this. I'm very open to that kind of stuff. And having those people that I mentioned around me have helped kind of get us to where we are now. So
absolutely, 100%. So you've been in the travel ball world a long time, seen it, go from, like you said, not even having the opportunity to what it is today. There's a two-part question. One, what gets you excited about where it is today? Like, what's your why, right? Like, why do you do this? And then the other one would be, if there was this governing body and you were the commissioner of it, right? You were the god of travel ball, right? What's one thing that you would change? So again, what's your why, and what are you excited about travel ball? And then if you could change one thing, what would it be?
So my why would be one word, and that's opportunity. I just think travel baseball gives players opportunities to do things that I never dreamed of as a kid. So that's my why, is I want to create opportunity for players that have a love for the game to come to our facility, work with our instructors and coaches, and get better at it, and hopefully fulfill their dreams of playing at whatever level they want to play at. So that's really the driving force, is just, and I think that's the great thing with travel baseball, is it does create opportunity and exposure, and get you in front of people that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have been able to get in front of. And then the second part of the question, if I were and man, do I ever wish I was this person. I honestly think that I would, believe it or not, I think less is more. I think it's too much now. I think there's almost too many games, too much tournament baseball pressure, too much. Like, I think we need to practice more, develop more, and probably play fewer games. And those games probably need to have less at stake, honestly. That doesn't mean that there can't be occasional games that have high stakes, because I think they need that. They need that pressure. But I think every single game, every single weekend, just because there's so much money involved, and there's, the parents are putting a lot of stuff, time and money into it, that it just becomes almost a college level pressure at 10 years old.
Right.
And sometimes it's too much. And so that would be, no one would listen to me, by the way, like this, because of the money involved in this. I don't think I would get many votes or support in this, but that would be what I would try to do, is try to establish a less is more process or method or way of doing this.
Well, things only happen through conversation. And I think, the more, Jason, that I do this and get to have opportunities to have conversations with guys like you'd be shocked how much I do hear that. Right. So, I think that One thing I'd love to kind of touch on is this pressure that kids and then parents feel. We had a mental skills coach on to our family webinar. I think it was about 2 months ago, and he's one of the top guys. He does stuff for Fortune 500 CEOs and MLB baseball players, and really really smart. And he asked me a question, and he thought I might get it wrong, but apparently I got it right. Let's see if you can. What's the number one driver of kids quitting their sport?
Well, we have a mental performance coach on staff, and so I'm pretty sure that burnout is probably the answer to that, if I had to guess.
That'd be number two. Number one would be parents. Number one
Oh,
would actually be the parents, right? And the pressure that that they can put on their kids. And again, you're a parent, I'm a parent. The last thing that we want to do is see our kids fail, right? So I know that as a young coach, before I had kids, I was like the crusader against the parent, right? I remember sitting at my parent meeting and saying, "Hey, the dugout's where I do my work. You wouldn't come into my job and tell me what to do," right? But the fact of the matter is that we're actually dealing with something a lot different, and that's a person's child, right? So I think that there has to be a little bit of a give and take between an organization and a parent, and a really good relationship. But at the same time, I think advice that I give parents and try to give parents is like, when you get in the car after the game, right? Unless he or she brings up the game, don't talk about it, right? When they're ready to talk about it, they'll talk about it. But the pressure that's created, I think, has a lot to do with that, right? Parents feel that they understand what their kids are going through, and they all want what's best for their kids. But really interesting take from you for sure on that. So
yeah, it's just again, it went from underwhelming to probably overwhelming
right,
in about a 20-year period, and luckily or unluckily, I have been there to witness it the entire time.
exactly.
So I definitely have a different perspective now than when I was a 25-year-old just getting into this. I had rah, tons of energy and all of that. But yeah, it's definitely a different take now that I have kids involved and all of that.
Well,
So
I've got you parlayed me into my next question, and then I've got one more after that for you. So my next question is, if you could talk to your 25-year-old self, right, as a coach, as an organization owner, right, is there anything that you've learned in all these years that you would go back and tell yourself starting off?
100%. I care too much sometimes, which I know sounds crazy, but it's been detrimental to me. I've cared so much with so much passion that I've probably pushed people away or upset people. And so my 47-year-old self would tell my 25-year-old self to chill, just relax, just take it all in and enjoy it a little more. I'm an extremely intense human being just by nature. I mean, I work on spreadsheets intensely, man. Like I just I don't have a relax button. I really don't. And that's what at 25, I would try to somehow develop the relax button a little bit. And it's still extremely hard for me to care less. Um, but that's probably for my own health and the health of the people around me. That's probably the best advice I could give my 25-year-old self.
I love it. I love it. Actually, that's a really good answer. So, last question for you. Obviously, you've been in this a long time. Recently, obviously, becoming Canes, Indiana. Where do you see your guys' program 5 years from now, and what are your goals for the program over the next 5 years?
Um, I really hope that with the Canes name and branding, which is one of the primary reasons that we chose to go in that direction, is that we can get more players exposure and in front of the right uh, opportunities, in front of the on more competitive teams with better players around them. Um, and so I want to see us be thought of as one of the top programs in the mid, and I already thought we were, but I think now this even takes us to another level. Like, I want us to be thought of as one of the top programs in the region. I and I again, I think that we're close to there already. I just think that now with the Canes branding and some of the benefits that are going to come with that, that it can push us to levels that I don't think we could have gotten to as Indiana Twins. And so that's again, we're very early on in the Canes Indiana thing. So I don't know what's to come, honestly, with that, but I'm optimistic that it's going to be good for our players and our families. If we continue to do what we were already great at, and then we get the advantage of the Canes branding and exposure and those types of things, I'm excited about all